Hey everybody, Jeff Schneider here, and today I'm going to share with you the 5 words that completely transformed the way I approach soloing and practicing and teaching music. But before I tell you what they are, I've got to tell you a quick story. So recently I started reading a book I normally wouldn't read. It's this classic from the 19th century called Middlemarch, and I quickly realized that I was in way over my head right from the very first page because every other word was a word I didn't understand. So I actually set up my iPad with the Kindle app on one side and ChatGPT on the other, and I'm constantly copying and pasting individual words and entire passages from the Kindle app to ChatGPT to try to get it to explain to me what the heck I'm reading. And this worked. It was slow, but it got me through the first few chapters, and that's when something interesting happened. As I made it to the 3rd or the 4th chapter, I started to see some of the words that I'd seen before in the earlier part of the book. And the first time I saw them, it was like, wait, what? And then the second time around, there was this recognition, this familiarity, and it was like, oh, I see what you did there. And that gave me some encouragement and confidence and motivation to press on. And it also reminded me of a solo I transcribed. The first solo I transcribed all the way through was a solo by Michael Brecker on the tune Confirmation by Charlie Parker. And when I started transcribing this solo, it was the same experience. Really slow. I had to go one note at a time. But what happened as I got further into the solo was I started to recognize phrases that Brecker played earlier in the solo, like legit the same exact licks and phrases. I'll give you some examples. So take a listen to this right here. That part right there, and then listen again. And then listen again. These are different parts of the solo, but the same exact lick. Here's another example. And here. And here. And here's a slightly varied version. And another variation. That's like a double time version. So you can see that even Brecker is using a vocabulary that he reuses and in different ways sometimes, but sometimes not. Sometimes the exact same part of the form, it's just the same lick. Again, something that gives me confidence to take on new solo transcriptions and even just to make it feel less like these giants are so out of reach, like Michael Brecker or Coltrane or Chris Potter or whoever you like to listen to. These are some of the best soloists that have ever lived, but they still have a vocabulary. And the more you familiarize yourself with their playing, the easier time you'll have learning how they do what they do. And how do you do that? Well, of course, the obvious answer is to spend time with the material. But there's another more subtle approach that you can take, which is to build up associations with the material. How do you do that? Analysis is a great way. Analyzing what is happening there in the music. How do the notes relate to the chords? What's that relationship between the horizontal and the vertical? Also looking for shapes and common patterns within the notes. Is there an arpeggio or a scale pattern that you learned when practicing your scales or arpeggios? And by building those associations, it becomes easier to internalize and familiarize yourself with the new. And it's not so, wait, what? And it's more like, oh, I see what you did there. So here's a fun demonstration of how you can use association to improve your learning. So take, for instance, this random string of letters, A, T, M, B, M, W, N, B, A, N, A, S, A. Here it is again, A, T, M, B, M, W, N, B, A, N, A, S, A. So if you focused and you concentrated and you listened closely, maybe you can recall all of those letters, but chances are they just kind of went over your head because there was nothing there to associate with. But let me read them again now with a slightly different pattern. ATM, BMW, NBA, NASA, NASA. Of course, that's a lot easier to remember now because it's the same letters, but we've chunked them in these groups that we already have some pre-existing knowledge to help us link the new to the old. What does this have to do with the 5 words? Well, it has to do with gaining familiarity and how familiarity will give you confidence when you face something challenging or difficult. Don't say it's hard. Say it's unfamiliar. So the 5 words are, it's not hard, it's unfamiliar. The reason it works so well as a way to reframe a difficult challenge is because there's something about saying something is hard. I mean, hard, the word hard, it's solid, it's firm, it's immovable. There's a lot of resistance there. But unfamiliar, there's like this encouragement of curiosity of, okay, let's investigate. How do you make it familiar? In fact, the word unfamiliar contains the solution to the problem, which is to gain familiarity, which is essentially learning. That's what it means to learn something, is to become more familiar with it. I want to leave you with this. Yes, those 5 words, that mantra of it's not hard, it's unfamiliar, that's a great frame to use, but there's also something to be said for choosing challenges that are appropriate for your skill level and experience. For instance, if you're gonna learn how to dive, you're not gonna start on that 10-meter platform. You're gonna start on a regular diving board and work up from there. So you wanna choose material that works for you, that's going to push you but not overwhelm you. And that's why I created my licks series, Sick Licks, because I organized the licks by level and by genre. So I have the classic collection, the blues collection, the modern jazz collection, and within each of those genres, there's level 1, which is like beginner, and level 2, which is more intermediate advanced. If you want to check out Sick Licks, I've actually included this link to a free download where you can check out 36 of my favorite from the series. And again, that's linked below. And remember, if you come up against a challenge that's difficult and is frustrating you or making you feel like giving up, don't say to yourself, it's too hard. Say, it's not hard, it's unfamiliar. And that will give you the motivation and the confidence to keep going, keep practicing, and ultimately reach your musical goals and play the way that you've always wanted to play. So good luck, and remember, it's not hard, it's just unfamiliar. Well, that was 6 words, but you get the point.